Leadership has never been tougher. And with AI coming down the tracks like a steam train, the support systems for leaders need to evolve accordingly. Change is really tough, and some people will prefer the pain of the familiar.
What does it look like to incorporate neuroscience into peak performance kind of training?
Cognitive health and performance is absolutely at the core of our offering. That's the bit I think that is missing from the mainstream conversation. That ability to be evidence-based, data-driven, but still fundamentally human-centric is the way forward in terms of truly supporting leaders.
Hi Jason, welcome to the HumanWare project.
Thank you so much, Malene. Genuine privilege to be here.
Today, we're actually covering one topic about neurotraining and neurofeedback. Could you tell us from your perspective what it is and how you incorporate it into your work?
For me, I'll talk about the broader topic of cognitive health and performance, of which neurofeedback is a subset. And as somebody who was in a C-suite role, dealing with issues like stress management, making complex decisions under pressure, creatively problem solving, I didn't realize that we're in a world now where, thanks to neuroscience, that we can measure brain health and performance and can literally improve it. So you've got wonderful people like my colleagues, Dr. Brendan Stubbs, Sophie and Samira, who are like PTs for the brain. And so for me, I'm still very much learning and exploring this space, learning from the best in the business in terms of them. But I think it's critical that we bring this narrative into the mainstream to allow those in corporate life, whether they're executives or entrepreneurs, to not only lead better, but also live better.
What does it look like to incorporate neuroscience and measurement into peak performance kind of training?
There's a world where if we look at the traditional approach to executive performance and well-being, it's very siloed. So you'll have specialists talking about physical health over here, mental health over there. So you may be working with different specialists, a PT, an executive coach, a therapist. Now as a leader, your two most precious commodities are time and energy. So if you're left at the center trying to piece together the different advice you're getting from the specialists. Now for me that's fundamentally flawed, particularly as it doesn't contain the critical information about cognitive health and performance. So that's why I truly believe in an integrated approach. And sadly, I think the reality is that 95% of corporate boardrooms are still operating like it's 1990s. You know, so those leadership development and executive coaching programs, done with the best of intentions to support leaders, haven't taken advantage of the advances we've made in neuroscience and in data and tech. Whereas if you look at worlds like elite sports, the leaps over the past 20 years have been massive. I think if we look at neuroscience, the critical thing for me, it is evidence-based. So that ability to be evidence-based, data-driven, but still fundamentally human-centric is the way forward in terms of truly supporting leaders. Because let's face reality, and you'll notice yourself, leadership has never been tougher. Yeah. And with AI coming down the tracks like a steam train, that pressure is only going to increase. And so again, the support systems for leaders need to evolve accordingly.
And from your perspective, with everything around the world happening, what are the good way for everyday people to really maintain their well-beings?
The era we're in now is a distraction economy. You know, we see it with social media, and I'll steal a phrase from my colleague, Dr. Brendan Stubbs, who's one of the world's top neuroscientists. And he talks about how the conversation on social regarding performance and well-being has been hijacked by extremists for likes and attention. And so we know there's a sea of misinformation out there. And that's where the work you're doing with the HumanWare project is so important, because it's that signal in the noise where you can give people clarity. I think the most important thing for people to understand is nothing beats doing the basics well. Sleep is the foundation of well-being. Movement is critical. Nutrition is critical, not just in terms of physical health, but also mental health. Because again, we know from neuroscience, everything is integrated. So Dr. Brendan did a study, for example, which proved that just over 15 minutes of movement is the point at which cognitive benefits start to kick in. And then if I look at the work that Sophie and I do in London or Samira in Dubai as part of Prime Performance Labs, cognitive health and performance is absolutely at the core of our offering. That's the bit I think that is missing at the moment from the mainstream conversation. And yet, particularly when it comes to leaders, it's absolutely critical. You know, if you think about anything that defines great leadership, so that ability to make complex decisions under pressure, that ability to regulate your emotions, the ability to manage stress, to creatively problem solve, all of those variables are massively impacted by your cognitive health and performance. And so if leaders truly want to show up at their best, they should be thinking about how they can improve their brain health.
I see how much all the neurotraining have changed me.
Yeah.
I don't come from a science background. However, I feel because of all those neurotraining, it's really put me into a way better stage. I can't even believe that I became someone who so enjoy learning and all of that. I think there has a trigger for your brain, and also I have recommend different people to try different treatment. So when you're working with different clients, what are the type of change or transform you witness?
So I think the critical thing is having a bespoke approach. So the other thing I feel quite strongly about is that the era of one-size-fits-all models has gone. You know, we know enough about ourselves now, so that each of us is truly unique. You know, so all the data proves that. And we're also unique in terms of lifestyle circumstances. So, you know, in the past, of course, when I was in my corporate career, because I was big on self-development, I would try different programs, but some of them would feel like a straitjacket because you were trying to adopt something that is meant for everybody. So again, to use a very simple analogy, it's like the difference between getting a bespoke suit and buying one off the peg. We're in an era now where everybody should have a bespoke suit, should have that access to information, but also understand that, again, and this is something I know we feel strongly about, but do whatever works for you. You know, rather than feeling this pressure, particularly from so-called social media gurus, to adopt their methodology, which of course they're clearly pushing because they have a commercial imperative to do so. So I'll use a reference point. So I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. So everybody knows him as the movie star he was, but he was also, for me, a modern day philosopher.
He is.
And one of the great things he did when he created his own martial art, Jeet Kune Do, was he didn't try and follow traditional martial arts in terms of you must adopt this technique and you must approach it this way. He actually said, absorb what is useful, discard what is useless. And I think that's such an insightful comment in terms of the world we're in now, that people should understand, no, just because a tech bro is telling you you need to be in an ice bath at 4 a.m. No, you don't. Just do what works for you. Have that experimental mindset, have self-compassion, and I think you live this already. Be an explorer.
Yeah.
Try different things, and then based on how you feel, because emotions are extremely important as humans, you can make decisions and have agency about how you want to live your life, as opposed to feeling under pressure to live it because somebody on social is telling you you need to do this.
So can you tell us the process as a client, like who working with you, what it look like, how this kind of personalized approach going?
Yeah, absolutely. So first things first, it's about meeting people where they are. So we have an initial onboarding assessment to assessing them across all their modalities, including interactive cognitive tests, so we can understand their brain health and performance. Secondly, there's a collaborative interview, which I feel, again, is critical. The only program that matters is one that you're going to follow. So it's about understanding likes and dislikes. It's understanding, particularly with leaders, time constraints. You know, so for example, if I look at our existing client base, you may have somebody who says, look, my fitness is not where it needs to be. I need to improve. I know I want to improve. So the reality is they're time poor. So somebody coming from a PT background, for example, and saying, okay, you need to be in the gym with me 3 times a week for a minimum 1 hour at a time, potentially isn't able to see, again, the full picture in terms of that leader not being able to do that, commit to that. Not that they don't want to improve, but they're just not meeting them where they are. Yeah. So what we do is in that collaborative interview, what are your desired outcomes over our 6 months of working together? 6 months, because as we both know, meaningful, sustainable transformation takes time. I have a huge problem with those who promise quick fixes because they're motivated by commercial gain rather than generally by purpose and supporting those who need that support. Fundamentally, those individuals are motivated by commercial gain rather than doing good. And I think people shouldn't lose sight of that, and that can help them manage that messaging. So we sit with that client, we understand what their desired outcomes are over the course of 6 months working together. We place that in the context of where they are at the moment, according to the data, and then we set those goals collaboratively. And I think what's critical here is that, again, it's about focusing on what we call the boulders rather than the pebbles. Because people will do a lot of tactical downstream activities in a bid to improve. And the reality is, again, if we go back to the power of neuroscience, it shows how everything starts with mindset. You know, quite literally, the brain being the CEO of the body. So if you want meaningful change, work upstream in terms of what that looks like and go from there. So if I give you a tangible example, we had one client who came to us and spoke about wanting to change in terms of everything from yo-yo dieting through to they've reached very successful career, but they reached a point where they were increasingly concerned about purpose and legacy. But in their last couple of career moves had been unduly affected by being wanted. They're very good at what they do, and so had been headhunted, and so would procrastinate and then make an impulsive decision based on who was shouting loudest at that point. So you have what look like two completely distinct, very different desired outcomes. But in fact, that shift between procrastination and impulse, of course, it's exactly the same mindset, just manifesting itself in different ways, whether it's the hard data of the relationship with food or the soft data of purpose and legacy.
Oh, that's interesting. So individual can work with you with the onboarding progress to say, this is my ideal outcome for 6 months or 1 year. And basically someone will help me with the right mindset, with the right advice, with the right neurotraining to change my mind
Exactly
to that stage.
Exactly that. And crucially, not just someone, because again, we both know those gurus out there who present themselves as a panacea. We're very much team-oriented. What Sophie, Samir and Dr. Brendan can do in terms of neuroscience and brain health and performance, I can't, and I've got no interest in pretending. Every day is a school day for me, learning with those talented individuals. So again, going back to truly being in service to your client, you map the best team to their specific needs and desired outcomes. I think that's crucial, rather than just, as we've both seen, individuals who say, I'm the answer, and they'll just try and change hats and pretend they can be an expert in that area as well. I'm a huge believer in getting the ego out of the way.
Yeah.
And understanding that you may not be the answer for that client. And what's crucial is you help them find the right person if you aren't. That's the ethical and moral thing to do.
And when we talk about the self-compassion, can we dive deep a little bit into that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that manifests itself in a number of ways. I think if we look at those in leadership roles, frequently they would fall into what we'd call, in coaching terms, insecure overachievers. The double-edged sword of the fact that their drive has got them to this position, but there's also a reality where they're brutally harsh on themselves and they don't have that perspective. And so there's this mental punishment that's ongoing in terms of saying, I'm not good enough. And I think in the era we're in now, social media in particular can reinforce that messaging. And I think it's critical that, in fact, I'll steal one of my biggest learners. So I was very fortunate. I trained INSEAD in executive coaching under an amazing gentleman, Professor Derek Deasy. And when I first went on that course, I think I was well-intentioned, but coming from various leadership roles, had too much of a directive style. I wanted to fix. And what Derek really impressed upon myself and other members of that cohort, which was the first ever coaching cohort at INSEAD, was our role is not to fix or even change people. Our role is to help them understand their relationship with their status quo and their external environment. And then they can decide if they want to change by making informed decisions. Because, as he rightly said, change is really tough. And some people will prefer the pain of the familiar. And so I think helping individuals understand exactly where they are in terms of the hard data, but also in terms of emotions and purpose and meaning is critically important.
There's many moments I got to say where you're just like, oh my God, like, how do you cope with all those information? So I say from our channel's perspective, it's not about, look, we got it, this is one solution for everyone. It's about to curate the world, to find what are the methods out there, and then people can try it for themselves, and then to be relaxed about it, to feel a little bit better about themselves.
It's such important work that you're doing. I really think you mentioned curation. I think human curation, in an era where there is a sea or possibly a swamp of content, is a superpower. That ability to be that signal in the noise, to help people filter and focus on what really matters. So you're doing that through this wonderful medium of content. The Prime Performance Labs team are trying to do this from perspective of helping individuals move forward and understand what's truly important in their lives. Because I think the thing that we both clearly believe, progress is always possible.
Yes.
Without question. So people can feel overwhelmed in the distraction economy we're now in. And I think it's really important that they understand that there is always a pathway forward, that increasingly, thanks to advances in neuroscience and data and tech, it's increasingly easy to map that path if you have the right guides to help you.
Yes.
And I think the other important thing is recognizing that data and tech are tools. And I always think about, there's an amazing Olympic sprint coach called Stuart McMillan. Mm-hmm. So he's trained about 80 Olympians. And so he went into coaching. His father was a structural engineer. So he went in with a great belief in what you and I would call hard data. So things like gait analysis, stride pattern. What's really interesting now, as he's widely regarded as one of the world's best coaches in athletics, he said the more he's learned, the more he understands that while the hard data is important, it's about recognizing that as humans, we are complex, non-linear creatures. So he says that one of his most important data points is how his athletes feel. Yeah.
That's actually very aligned with you, Jason. Like, we, as a channel, we really believe we want to offer a rainbow of content rather than just a hard data approach. I really see people flourish in their own ways. This world is so big. They don't have one way to fix it all, and we want to find more and more those secrets that holding in different key holders' hand.
The magic of being human is our complexity, is our messiness. So there are no quick fixes. Everything is about having that explorer mindset.
Yeah.
And I think in keeping with that, it's about recognizing, and again, I trained in the psychodynamic school of coaching, and one of its foundational principles is to treat emotions as data points. And if you think about it, that's perfectly valid when it comes to humans. When we talk about our highs and our lows, we talk about how we felt. I've yet to meet anyone who says to me, my wedding was amazing. Everything happened on time, and I brought it in under budget. You talk about how it just felt like the best day of your life. So, again, I think these are really critical because, again, if we go back to the era that we're in now, the tech industry is so dominant in narratives, and you will frequently get individuals talking about how we need to be more logical, to be more rational.
That's right.
And I say utter rubbish.
Yes.
On so many levels. What makes us human is this wonderful emotional complexity we have. And of course the irony is, if we even look at the most celebrated individuals within that sector, we can go back to Einstein right through to Steve Jobs and so on, that so many of them, what they achieved was because they were irrational and emotional and felt so strongly about something that they didn't give up. You know, look at the Wright brothers inventing flight. You know, at the time, everyone said it would be hundreds or thousands of years before man would ever be able to take to the skies. So them experimenting on devising an airplane that could make human flight possible was completely irrational based on the spirit of the times.
I love that. And could you tell us what bring you into the world of training and neuroscience? Are you always starting this way?
No, I've been on my own voyage of discovery, much like yourself. So in my last role, my last corporate role, I was a global COO. Had clients such as YouTube and Apple Music. So on one level, everything I'd worked towards. But on another level, day-to-day reality involved a lot of stress, long hours, 7 a.m. calls with Singapore, 10 p.m. with Los Angeles, isolation. And I was trying as much as possible to do the right thing, as a big believer in self-development. So I was walking the walk. I had my own executive coach. I was training 5 times a week at a CrossFit facility. And then I was listening to Huberman podcasts or reading books around performance and well-being. And I think that's what made me acutely aware that everything was siloed. And I was still left at the center of this, trying to piece together the puzzle. Now that coincided with also understanding more about neuroscience and understanding that the insights there are absolutely critical in terms of performance and well-being, and most importantly, evidence-based. So for me, I'm like, why is there this artificial, invisible curtain between what neuroscientists know and what's commonly known in mainstream media, but also in the business world? Because actually, these insights and techniques are proven through deep research, and so should be available to all. So that, I think, you know, but again, you're doing it with your entire project, which is not just on your own voyage of discovery, but how do you share that with others to lift them up? And so fundamentally, we're doing the same thing in a different way with Prime Performance Labs. We want to be bringing that to individuals to help them live better and lead better, and wherever possible, be adopting an evidence-based approach.
Let's say if there have 3 fundamental anchor mindset we can incorporate every day, what you would recommend people to focus on?
So I think if we accept that sleep, movement and nutrition are the non-negotiable pillars of both well-being and performance, I think the critical thing is actually a mindset in terms of having a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. That curiosity, that willingness to explore and to experiment, I think fundamentally is such an important human quality. And we've seen what happens, right? If you have fixed mindsets, if you cement in your ways, there's a huge amount of data now that proves how unhealthy that is for you, mentally and physically. So I think maintaining that growth mindset, and I think there's one insight I'd like to share purely because I'm on my own journey of discovery. So when we're trying new things, particularly as we get older, then the brain will send out distress signals. No, this feels uncomfortable, you know, and that can be misinterpreted as, okay, I should stop doing this. This doesn't feel right. It feels uncomfortable. What's actually happening there is that the brain is only 2% of your total body weight, but it expends 20% of your energy. This wonderful, complex mechanism. So it's obsessed with energy efficiency. Therefore, anything forcing it to work harder, it will push back against. So in the case of trying a new activity, that might be learning a musical instrument, it might be doing something physically, it might be trying to learn a language. You will experience discomfort. And there can be a tendency to then withdraw and see that as a distress signal. What's happening is you're creating new neural pathways, which is fundamentally incredibly important for your cognitive health and performance. So again, to break it down into a simple analogy, your brain will always try and direct you down the concrete path, the easy path, because it's already paved those neural pathways based on previous behaviors. Trying to create a new pathway is like taking a machete and trying to slash your way through the jungle. So it's uncomfortable. However, if you understand that when you get those signals, they're actually positive signals, but growth is taking place, it can reframe your entire relationship with those new activities, and you actually embrace those signals as signs that positive change is happening.
Sometimes we don't know how we feel. We need to label it. So at that moment, I really believe if you label it positively with the data, you will give yourself more certainty to say, okay, that is the right thing. Let me keep doing that because I see the result as the data, as my brain scan is getting better rather than worse.
And I think, again, it's where self-compassion also plays a part. There's a psychological term called unpacking, and that's really about really making people understand the difference between process and what you can call artificial finish lines or destination. So, for example, if you go on holiday and it's wonderful sunshine, you're in the Mediterranean and you're having a coffee and you're unwinding, that's a point at which you can go, I would love nothing more than to be running this coffee shop, just hanging out in the sunshine, chatting to lovely customers. If you then do the process of unpacking, you go past that superficial facade and you start to say, okay, if I unpack this, what would it really look like? What would my day-to-day reality look like if I ran this coffee store? Would I be happy dealing with suppliers? Would I be happy with dealing with angry customers? So I'm using that as a binary example, but I think it's something that we can all do in terms of you look at desired potential future outcome, but it's also important to break down the reality rather than seeing it in this sort of altered dream state. You know, we see it with New Year's resolutions. I think they frequently fail because people are obsessed with the outcome rather than the journey. And furthermore, they also put far too much pressure on themselves in terms of, I'm going to go from 0 to 100 forever. You know, so huge weight of expectation versus this curious, fun mindset of, do you know what? I'm going to just experiment with this, see how it feels. If I like it, brilliant. If I don't, that's okay, move on.
What are the one thing our brain follow as the rules that we can know to help us living better?
Follow the science and follow the evidence. I think that's foundational in terms of understanding so in terms of your cognitive health and performance, understanding what influences and impacts that and adjusting behaviors accordingly. I think secondly, again, understanding that everything is integrated. So yes, we should absolutely use the hard data, but also not obsess over it. And again, let me give you a tangible example, because we will talk about, you know, I use my Whoop. I think it's a fantastic wearable. It's very helpful in terms of allowing me to live better, but it's just a tool. And like any tool, it has limitations. And energy is a dynamic, amorphous concept. And so let me give you an example of what I mean. So I'm an entrepreneur running a business, and we'll go through two scenarios. Scenario A is I have a meeting with my biggest client at 10 a.m. And I wake up that morning, my Whoop tells me 8 hours, amazing quality sleep, you're in a great place. I feel good. I walk into that meeting, and unexpectedly, that client says they're taking away all their business. Doesn't matter what that said. My energy is going to plummet, and I'm going to be on the floor for days or weeks. Conversely, scenario B, I may have had 4 hours really broken sleep because I'm going to see biggest client and I fear the meeting will go badly. So I go into that same 10 a.m. meeting looking like an extra from The Walking Dead. And unexpectedly, they turn around and say, actually, we're going to double our business with you. Suddenly, I'm ready to take on Mike Tyson. It doesn't matter what that said. So again, we can't lose sight of the fact that fundamentally, we are human. Our feelings and emotions are critical data points. And we also have agency. over our own lives and bodies. So we shouldn't be outsourcing them completely to these external tools. Well, we're currently witnessing the World Athletics Championships take place. So again, elite athletes, you don't see any of them running 400 or 800 meters, checking their watch, see whether they're on track for the right time, because they are so finely tuned into their own data, but they have that awareness of what's going on. And so I think that's really critical in terms of living a good life. Trust yourself, trust your own data, both the hard data, but also the fundamentally human data of emotions and feelings.
For me, I think sometimes we forgot that, and it's very important to stay true and aligned with our feeling.
Yeah, I believe it was Einstein who said, not everything that matters can be measured. We shouldn't lose sight of that.
Thank you, Jason, for your time. I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you, it's been a privilege.
Thank you for watching this new episode of the HumanWare Project. So that we can experiment and try new technology together, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to us.